Hi everybody, this is Charles Rather, Managing Partner at Amlaw Group. Questions we get sometimes focus, and I don't take it at all as an insult, but say, well, why do I really need an immigration lawyer? And I'll have to admit that there are some cases where you probably don't need an attorney to handle your immigration matter. First and foremost, I would say, is a tourist visa. If it's just a straightforward tourist application, you have no pre-existing criminal convictions or any problems with the law, you haven't had any denials before, you really don't need an attorney, to be honest. Um, Family reunification, for example, through a marriage, or if you wanted to invite over one of your parents and sponsor them for a green card. If you're detail oriented, have a good knowledge of English, and can handle following instructions closely, quite possible you could do that on your own as well. At the other end of the spectrum, I would say are cases like EB-5 visas. Those are extremely difficult for the most part compared to many other visas. I even have to pay extra for my malpractice insurance because we deal with a lot of EB-5 cases. So even from a risk perspective, insurance companies understand that these are more challenging cases than just typical immigration ones. So if we take the example of an EB-5 scenario, what role does the attorney play in this case? The first thing I would say is whether it's an EB-5 attorney or other immigration attorney, but say in the case of an EB-5 visa, first of all, we've been doing this for probably 20 years now. So as you can imagine, after 20 years of handling cases like this, we have a very good understanding by the responses we get from USCIS or in just preparing the paperwork. We know what they're looking for. We know exactly in what format, what kind of information they want to receive, what is adequate and what isn't. Unfortunately, a lot of clients figure that, hey, I opened a bank account in Europe last year, or I opened one in America, and they check my background. I passed, the background check. I was able to open my bank account. My money is clean. That's far from what is required for an EB-5 visa. The fact of the matter is, it's quite complicated, overly complicated, I would say, to apply for an EB-5. And for that reason, it's very important to have an experienced attorney, not just an attorney that does immigration in general, but an attorney that has good experience doing EB-5. How do you get good experience? I guess that's a general question, but I would say, if you're talking to potential attorneys, you should talk to other attorneys besides us. Ask them how many petitions they've had, how many approvals they've had, how many denials, why did they get the denials. I would say in our particular case, like I said, we've been doing this probably about 15 years, at least EB-5s. We've had less than 10 denials during that time, given the hundreds of EB-5 cases that we've had. So I think that's a very good track record. I would say it takes at least probably 10 to 20 petitions before you really have a good handle on what you're doing. And here's the important thing too, if you're talking to other EB-5 attorneys, find out when they actually filed their first cases. Because if you talk to an attorney who says, yeah, I filed 25 EB-5 cases, I know this flat. But the problem is that the attorney says, well, I filed them all a year ago or 2 years ago. Chances are very high that that attorney hasn't even gotten any feedback on his or her cases. So the cases he filed 2 years ago, almost with 100% certainty, I can say that they haven't gotten a result back from USCIS. So the attorney might think he knows, EB-5 cases, cold, but the reality is he hasn't even gotten an approval or a denial or an RFE because not enough time has passed since those cases were filed. So I would say you want to have somebody who's experienced, who's had at least 20 cases where they've gotten a response. So you can see on the basis of those 20 cases, how many were approvals, how many were denials. And to get that number of approvals, I would say you'd have to be doing this for at least 5 years. I mean, any time frame less than that, you're just not going to have enough time to acquire decisions regarding your client's cases. So I think that's a very important thing. Don't ask just how many cases they filed, ask how many cases they've gotten results or answers, whether they're positive or negative. And at that point, you'll have a good idea. So if you see this attorney's only been in business for, say, 3 or 4 years, I think chances are pretty low that he or she would be able to answer in the affirmative to these issues regarding EB-5 visas. The other reason why an EB-5 attorney is so important is because we have a very good grounding and understanding of what's required from the clients in terms of the paperwork. Clients too often just think it's sufficient to show their tax return, their bank statements, and that's it. And unfortunately, they're not clear on the level of detail that USCIS requires. And quite honestly, that level of detail keeps growing with every year. And I don't think it usually makes much sense, quite honestly. But those are what the rules are. And so we know what the rules are. We know which way immigration is going. And we've had enough cases, hundreds and hundreds of cases, that we can feel like if they come back with the RFE, request for evidence, that's asking certain issues. It's kind of funny sometimes clients are in a panic when they get these RFEs and they think this is, the sky is falling based on the questions they're asking. And we'll look at it and we're like, hey, this is actually pretty good. It's not a problem to respond to this. And we know exactly how to prepare an answer. So for those reasons as well, I think it's very important to have an experienced attorney. Why else is it important? Well, when you're picking your investment for the EB-5 project, we're not investment advisors. We're not regional centers, but we've worked with a lot of the former and the latter for quite some time. And in particular, we've worked with a lot of regional centers, and thank goodness, a lot of good regional centers. So we know what good regional center projects look like. If you're a first-time EB-5 investor, and the chances are this is something you're only going to do once in your lifetime, you're not going to know by looking at the PPM, the business plan. Is this a typical type project? Are these typical terms and conditions, or is there something unusual here? And with our experience, that's something relatively quickly by looking at the offering documents, we can understand. Is this par for the course? Is this something typical for this kind of work, for these kinds of projects? And if it's not typical, what sticks out? Where are the risks for our clients? And what do we need to discuss with the regional center? And if we can't get the responses that we think are adequate or needed for our client, we might tell the client, you should look at a different project. And we can give suggestions for other projects. We know a lot of regional centers in this space, and we know a lot of them who have good track records. And I think one important thing with EB-5 is this isn't venture capital. This is not Startup 101. You don't want to be unnecessarily risking your money. If you want to look for a high return where you can get, triple-digit return on your money, that's fine. It's just that EB-5 is not the correct venue to be doing that. The vast majority of our clients, and I believe this probably applies to all of you watching this, is that their biggest concern is preserving their capital. And that's not only because they're risk averse, but the problem is if there's problems with this business, if something comes up that the business goes south, that you not only lose your money, you might be losing your residency as well. And that's even more damaging for our clients, because if they have children here, they bring their kids here, children are going to school, the parents are getting adapted to life here, maybe start new jobs, start new businesses. The last thing you want is after 3 or 4 or 5 years that you not only lose your money from the EB-5 investment, but based on that loss or inability to recover your funds, you're not able to get a permanent green card. So for these reasons and others, it's very important to pick a safe, reliable project that you can maximize the likelihood of achieving your goals, namely getting the conditional green card, permanent green card, subsequently passport if you'd like it, and getting your money back. You're not going to make a lot of money on an EB-5 investment, but that's not the point. That's what you have your financial advisor for, to put you in other equities or alternative investments or whatever you want to do, or your own business. That's how you make your money. EB-5 is all about preserving your capital, preserving your future for your family, and ultimately getting your money back. So hopefully this was helpful to explain to you what role we play in this process, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have on this or other aspects of moving to the United States. Once again, this was Charles Rather.